Okay, good morning, everyone. It looks like we're not quite at all of our registrants are in yet, so we're going to give it just another minute or so. But if everyone can remember to keep your microphone on mute, please, any questions that you have, we'll be stopping once during the training to answer questions. Please put them in the chat box. Also, your name and your district in the chat box as well, just so we have a list of everyone who attended the meeting. Hey, good morning again, everyone. It is 10:02. We're going to go ahead and get ready. And to start, again, remember, put your name and your district in the chat box. Any questions that you have, please list those in the chat box. We will stop and answer questions once during the training and then at the end. And make sure you keep your microphone on mute for me, please. And with that being said, Chuck, you can go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming back today for day 2. This is all about WordPress.com. And I am excited about this because I've learned a lot preparing for this training. WordPress.com has come a long way in the last few years. So I'm excited to be able to share some of the changes that they've gone through with you all today. One of the biggest changes you may have heard about or you may be experiencing yourself is the block editor. And so we're going to be spending some time talking about that in this training as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So this is the website workshop, and I am Chuck Moran of Ball Guy Studio in Charlottesville, and I am your trusty website creation guide. So WordPress.com, this has been around since back in the early 2000s. It was created by a gentleman named Matt Mullenweg. He's an American. He had a partner named Mike Little, who I believe is a Brit. And Little and Mullenweg created WordPress.com back in 2003. And that was the initial release of the software. And then the public release came out in 2005. It's interesting that Mullenweg is the CEO, and I didn't realize this until I got ready to into working on this training, but the Matt in Automatic, the name of his company, is a play on Matt's name. So that's interesting. So back in the mid 2000s, I guess 2007, 2008, somewhere around there, I recall the software really caught my attention and the attention of a whole lot of HTML website designers who had been not stuck with HTML, but that's all we had up until that point because of all the features that WordPress was suddenly was able to offer. So especially being able to skip coding as an HTML designer, you really did have to know at least some basic HTML. And then when CSS came out, which I never really got awesome at, you had those tools to work with, but WordPress kind of cleaned the slate and gave us a content management system that made a lot of that stuff disappear, which was really pretty cool. One of the things that we were able to do was to add pages very easily. So in the old days when we were hard coding HTML, if we changed something in the footer of somebody's page on, let's say, their about page and they had 20 pages, we would have to go through and change the code on every single footer. Over time, that there were some tools that came along that fixed that, but it was a pain in the butt. So their mission at WordPress.com, it reads, at WordPress.com, our mission is to democratize publishing and e-commerce one website at a time. We're a hosted version of the open source software called WordPress, because when you have the freedom to create, express yourself, and earn money online, the impossible becomes business as usual. So a couple of things about that mission statement. I think if I hear that statement of something or other one more time, or one website at a time, I'm going to start throwing things. But I really do like what they're saying here about when you've got the freedom to create, then the impossible becomes business as usual. So what we're moving toward, folks, is ease of use, constantly moving toward ease of use. I'm sure you see this in your own technological worlds. So WordPress.com distinguishes from the self-hosted WordPress.org because WordPress.com is for profit. It's a profit center in and of itself. It has 1,680 some employees, and they use the same exact software that WordPress.org uses, or as we call it, self-hosted WordPress websites, but it's open source. And so that makes it free and easy for us to download for free. So what can you create with a WordPress website? Well, back when I first started dealing with it, WordPress.com in particular was just a piece of blogging software, and Mullenweg and Little created it because a blogging software that had been out there that had kind of a weird name, can't remember exactly what it was, but that got discontinued. And so they basically swept into the void and created this software called WordPress. And that then filled the void for bloggers. But then people like me and others began to say, okay, well, that's really nice, but we'd like to have additional functionality. We'd like to have the ability to create pages and do some other cool things with the software. So now the whole ecosystem is really expanded to such an amazing and enormous degree that you can create websites for government agencies and nonprofits, blogs and magazines, photography, art portfolios, corporate organizations, e-commerce, entertainment, forums, community hubs, basically anything that you can create a website for, you can build this on WordPress.com. And I used to not be able to say that because there were so many limitations to the software, but those are no longer with us. So WordPress.com, I'd say, is doing rather well. If you take a look at the stats, 409 million unique visitors. These are monthly stats. 20 billion page views, 70 million new posts each month, and then 77 million new comments onto blog posts each month. So getting started on WordPress.com, if you're creating a new website or you're thinking about undertaking a makeover, let's say you're on Wix or another one of the platforms, Weebly or the GoDaddy Builder, and you're thinking about coming over to WordPress.com, I suggest that you go ahead and start with a free site to get a feel for how it all works, and then upgrade to get rid of ads. And we'll talk about that in just a second. The free plan does come with ads, and they're not subtle little lines of text down at the bottom of your screen. They're pretty prominent. So upgrading will get rid of those, and will also give you access to additional features. Another thing that's very helpful about WordPress.com is you will get several helpful emails sent to you once you've signed up. I got an email just yesterday as a new subscriber to it. I'm still on the free plan. And I got one yesterday about SEO resources. So that's kind of cool. There are lots of changes going on, and I want you to pay attention to this. If you are looking at tutorials, even some of the tutorials that WordPress itself put out as recently as 2 or 3 weeks ago, they're obsolete now. They're hammering away on the back end of WordPress.com and making some changes. So some of the things that I literally built into this training, when I went back to look for them, they weren't there anymore. So this content that you're seeing today is up to date. And I just suggest that you pay attention to this training, and then also be aware that this training may become slightly obsolete in the coming weeks, because they are systematizing things. And basically what I'm watching them do is move WordPress.com much more to the look and feel on the back end of self-hosted or WordPress.org websites. So let's go through the initial steps of setting up your account, picking a plan, meaning free or one of the monthly plans, and understanding the WordPress dashboard. So what I've done is I've created a little video that I'm going to play now. And as this runs, you'll be taken through those steps of account picking, or the account picking a plan, and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and play that video. Okay, let's dive into WordPress.com. As you might expect, we're going to head over to WordPress.com to get started. Once you arrive there, you will be on this particular page, and it's interesting that they point out what we were talking about last time, that 42% of the web is built on WordPress. Of course, this is a combination of WordPress.com and self-hosted WordPress websites that we'll be talking about in the next session. I would suggest that you take a look at the plans and pricing when you first get here. I'll talk in a minute about the free account, which is what we're going to start out with and discuss today. But to be able to get additional features, you really do need to upgrade to one of these higher plans. Honestly, I think this personal one for $4 a month when billed yearly is a great place to go. You can, when you get to this page, you can see the features that you get. You certainly get more with the premium plan. But the reason that free is good is that you can create the beginning of a website for your organization, and then display it in a reasonably hidden space. It is online on the web, but you don't have to tie it to your domain name right in the beginning. So you'll have a unique domain name. And that means that you can share that with additional people that you need to show it to for approval of the content and that kind of thing, or to collaborate with you as you're building the website. One thing, though, about the free account, and I think this is the biggest drawback to the free account, is that they will display WordPress ads on the right on your pages. So that's more than a little bit of a distraction. So I certainly recommend that you start with free, like we're going to talk about today, and then go ahead and build pay for one of the premium sites. You don't need to change anything about your content when you upgrade. Okay, so if you're going to go to log in, I've actually already created an account. If you had not created one, you would be greeted with a sign-up page at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and log in, and I'm not going to save that. So the first thing that I want to do is just give you a quick tour of the dashboard. The dashboard is this space that you land in when you first land on WordPress.com. So right up here, it's telling me that I've got onlinevideomastery.wordpress.com is the URL. And what's cool is that if you upgrade, you can get a free domain with one of your annual plans. So that's pretty cool. But certainly to begin with, whatever organization name.wordpress.com you want to use will be a great place to start. So this is basically home base for your WordPress.com website. Stats are pretty self-explanatory. This gives you an idea of what has been going on in terms of page views, visitors, comments, and likes. You are able to connect Google Analytics to your WordPress.com site, and I certainly encourage you to do that, because you will get much more robust information with Google Analytics than you do with this WordPress.com basic plan. So upgrades, this is how you can do that. This also gives you the opportunity to acquire a paid domain, set up your email, and take a look at existing purchases. Your inbox is pretty self-explanatory too. This is where your emails that are coming into your website will wind up. And like it says here, get your own domain for a custom email address, so you can set that up as well. Posts are blog posts, and these tend to be a little bit more transitory in the sense that they don't remain static on the page or on your website like pages do. Pages like services, about, those kinds of things, contact, those tend to remain static over time, although you're certainly free to tweak those. But posts are constantly replaced by new ones at the top, assuming that you are actually creating a blog. So posts are listed here. As soon as you click on this, you will wind up in this post category, and they start you off with an example post to show you what they're like. This is where you would add a new one. Categories are somewhat self-explanatory, but these are the larger breakdowns. So you might have one for interviews, or something like educational or tutorial, those kinds of things. You can create those major categories just by clicking on this link right here within your blog. Tags are more granular. Those are things like birds or cover crops, or those kinds of things that tend to be a little bit more granular. Media, this is where your media library is housed. There are a number of different things that you can click on across the top here to see your images, documents. Don't have any in here now. If you had uploaded any videos, you would put those here. And of course, they're constantly going to encourage you to upgrade to one of their upper plans. So you can upload media directly to your library, or do it from within a page or a post, but everything in your website winds up in the media library in terms of documents and images. So pages, as we said, are more static. So I've already created a couple of additional pages here, about and services. Home is pretty self-explanatory, and blog is, if you're going to create a blog, then you do need to have a page called blog that will contain your individual blog posts. Comments are things that wind up on your blog post down at the bottom. You've probably seen these when you've been reading posts that other people have created on the web, and down at the bottom you'll be encouraged to make a comment. You log in and do make a comment. What's interesting here, and you should know this, and I know that this is a concern for a lot of new website folks, and that is that they're concerned that comments are just going to go straight to the website. Well, they don't. You have to approve them. So they will show up in a pending or all, and that's all of your comments. Pending mean they're pending approval. Approved are ones that you approved. Spam are ones that you've marked as spam, and trash is trash. You've thrown them out. I suspect that WordPress.com is pretty good at keeping spam comments out, although some may sneak through. And one good practice is to watch for things that sound kind of like they might not be spam, but actually are. So you might get a comment like, "Really great content, you guys." Well, that's not really coming from somebody you want to approve to go on to your blog post. Feedback. This is responses from your forms. Let's see, Jetpack is pretty cool. If you upgrade, you'll get a lot more features that come with Jetpack, but you can click on this Learn More to learn more about what Jetpack manages, but it does give you a running total of the kinds of things that you've done. So it shows you that you've created pages and deleted them and that kind of thing. Backups. Once again, you need to upgrade to be able to create a backup, and I certainly recommend that you have some type of plan. Business, it looks like, is the one where you can get actual backups. Upgrade to business. Backup gives you granular control over your site with the ability to restore it to any previous state. and export it at any time. Akismet anti-spam is another tool that you can use to step on spam before it winds up on your website. I'm not a huge fan of Akismet anymore. It really used to be pretty good, but you can certainly start off with it. It comes with WordPress, and you can follow the directions here to get your Akismet API key, which will unlock that so that you can use Akismet. I really like a plugin called Clean Talk, and you are able to add plugins to your WordPress.com website like you can self-hosted WordPress. Once you get to, once again, some of those higher plans. Appearance, as you can see here on the Flyout, this is where you go to select your themes, to make customizations, to work on widgets, menus. So the plugins shows you some of the optional plugins that you can add. One of the ones that you probably will want to add fairly early is Yoast. There's some additional types of plugins out there that manage search engine optimization. Yoast is kind of the grandmother of all SEO plugins, so you could start with that. I happen to like one called Rank Math, RANKMATH. It's kind of the new kid on the block. People really like that one a lot. Users, this is where you can see all the people who have become users or that you've granted access to the back end of your website to help with collaboration. Right at this point, it's just me. If you wanted to add a new user, you would click on Add New. And typically, if you are the one who created the site, you are the administrator. And coming down this stack here, you can add additional people with different levels of access. So I would imagine if you've got a couple of people who are creating blog posts on your website, so let's say 2 or 3, then you might want to make all of them editor. And the nice thing about that is that it really protects some of the heavier duty back-end stuff from being monkeyed with, if you will. Authors, for instance, can write, upload photos to, edit, and publish their own posts, whereas editors has access to all posts and pages. So an editor would be able to create new posts as well as to edit posts that were created by an author. Tools, this is a number of different things you can sign up for, or you can click into marketing. Earn, import, and export. You can explore these on your own. Import and export are features if you're going to migrate your site off of WordPress.com to a self-hosted site or to another WordPress.com site, or if you want to import content. Unlikely that you would, but it depends on what your particular situation is. Settings, this is something I really do recommend you spend a little bit of time with. Your site title is going to be important. This is how you are known. And so I'm going to go ahead and type in Online Video Mastery and a site tagline right here. So I've added Online Video Mastery and a tagline here, and you'll see once this has been saved that it appears at the top of the website up in that tab inside a browser. It'll show the title of your website as well as the tagline. So it's important to have both of those in there. So I'm going to go ahead and save these settings. And then I really do recommend that you spend a little bit more time on this page and zoom down here. I have already changed my site time zone to New York, which is what WordPress thinks of as the East Coast. So if you happen to be in a different area, then you would select one of these other areas to isolate down onto your particular time zone. But WordPress will make a good guess using your IP address when you create your account as to where you are, and they may go ahead and put New York in here, but do check it because it's important that this just helps you keep your sanity basically, because it may default to the West Coast when you're really on the East Coast, and it can throw off your timing of your posts, your publication dates, and that kind of thing. So you can set your privacy here to coming soon or public. It has not been published yet, but I'm going to make mine say coming soon if I want, and I'm going to leave it on public for right now. Private is a setting where your site is only visible to you and people who have logged in. So footer credit, you can change the footer credit here if you wanted to add someone who helped with the site or that kind of thing. And then there's some additional tools here as well. So performance, this upgrade gives you more upgrade opportunities. Writing is a place where you go to set up things that control your blog post. These are your blog post settings. So how many pages, how many posts per page show up, whether or not you're enabling testimonials and those kind of things. I'm going to go ahead and enable that because I'm big on testimonials if you were paying attention last week. Discussion is more about the comments that come in on your post. And then reading is a little bit more about just another set of settings. So I don't want to bog you down with a great detail on each of these, but you can explore these on your own when you create an account on WordPress.com. The media flyout has to do with your image gallery carousel. So this enables various things like the background color behind your carousel, as well as whether or not you're going to allow metadata to show comments and that kind of thing. And then hosting configuration is upgrade to business plan to access all of the hosting features. So that's pretty much it. Unless you want to create another new website, then we're done with our tour of the dashboard. So I'm going to stop here and we'll take some questions if there are any, and then we'll move on to some of the nitty-gritty of creating pages and posts and getting your website underway. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. One thing I wanted to clarify, there's a point in that presentation where I make reference to importing and exporting content. That's not really the best tool if you're migrating an entire website. It's not bad for taking content, just pictures and text from one WordPress site and sticking it on another. But if you're moving in an entire website with the database and everything else from one host to another, like from WordPress.com over to a self-hosted site, then you're going to want to use something other than that import export. And there are plenty of tools out there, migration tools for that. So are there any questions from you all about what we've covered so far?
Chuck, it looks like we have one question so far. And what does tags and granular mean?
Okay, good question. Yeah, it's basically when you create a blog post, the way to think about it is that blog posts are created and then the next one that's created goes on top of that and the next one goes on top of that. So after a while, if you go to your blog index page, which is the home page for all of your blog posts, if you, let's say you've got 50 blog posts over several years, they're just in a stack of last in, first out, basically with the newest at the top. A better way to manage those blog posts is to break them into categories, and then the next level down is tags. So categories, you can take an individual blog post, create a category called educational or education or tutorials or interview, some of those sort of bigger words, so that, and you can actually have a URL for that. So it would be yourdomain.com/interviews. Right. And so when you click on that, then what WordPress does is it dynamically clusters everything that's been tagged with that category into one set of blog posts. So there may only be 10 interviews. So they're much handier to scroll through than all 50 that you had on your index page. Tags are the next level down of what I'm saying is granularity. So categories are higher form of selectivity, whereas tags are smaller. So those are things like I said, you could have, you could have tags for birds, cover crops, water water information, smaller types of things that are quote unquote more granular. And those also show up in your capabilities if somebody wanted to click on birds, there's a way for you to present that so that they can click on birds and see just the 2 blog posts that you tagged with birds. So that's how that works. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Chuck. It does not look like we have any other questions. If anyone has any questions, you can come off mute real quick and ask if you would like. Okay, it does not look like it, so we will continue to move on.
All right, sounds good. So I'm gonna go back to my screen. So let's take a look at the next steps. I'm going to get into another little video here. What I want to show you next is how to update your profile. This is kind of a fun part of WordPress.com, as well as your self-hosted WordPress websites, where you can do, upload an icon for your own picture or your logo, and then pick colors for the background that you're dealing with. I'll show you those in just a second. I'm also going to cover in this little clip a tutorial on how to pick a theme and some of the things you can do with a theme. And then we're also going to work with the website customizer, which is common both to WordPress.com as well as WordPress.org websites. So let's go ahead and click into that video. Okay, let's head over to a spot on your WordPress.com website where you can customize some of your profile settings. So if you click in this little icon in the upper right-hand corner, the little silhouette person, that will take you to this page, which is WordPress.com/me, and you will find that there are a number of different things that you can fill out here. I've gone ahead and filled mine out, so this is a tab that has that already done. I've uploaded my Online Video Mastery logo. You could use a picture of yourself or a Bitmoji or anything else you want, depending on what your needs are. First name, last name, public display name. I wanted to be Online Video Mastery. About me, that could be a short bio or a list of services that you provide. Gravatars are these cool little icons that follow you from website to website across the web that are associated with your email address. So in a lot of cases, if you were to create a new account on a different WordPress site, then your gravatar that's associated with that particular email address would appear. And it's kind of a handy little thing. It can be a little bit annoying. You may not want a particular logo or picture of yourself to show up when you create an account. So you can turn off gravatar profiles right here, and then you can actually delete them here at gravatar.com. Basically, I forget exactly what the GR stands for, but the avatar is an avatar. It's something that stands in for yourself. So then down here, you can add additional profile links. In this case, I linked out to my main website. So I'm going to save profile details, and that's now all up to date. So back over here on account settings, this is my username, email address, those kinds of primary things that you can make changes to here if you'd like to. Change your language if you want to. This is one of my favorite parts of WordPress.com, is being able to change the way that your dashboard color system works. I happen to be a big fan of ectoplasm. It's a very nice color, but you could use any of these that you want. And you can see how they change from aquatic, as you change from aquatic to default and back over to ectoplasm. So I'm going to use ectoplasm. Oh, and I don't want to close my account permanently, so make sure you don't click on that. And it looks like this auto-saved, so I'm going to move on to this next item. This is obviously just a list of purchases that you've made. Security is a place where you can change your password if you want to. Privacy, share information with our analytics tool about your use of services while logged in. I'm not really big on sharing information. Probably not a really great thing to not help out that way, but I don't typically do that. A data processing addendum, DPA, allows websites and companies to assure customers, vendors, and partners that their data handling complies with the law. I have not clicked on this. This is a whole area of interest for all of us as website developers and designers and owners that we will need to take a look at about privacy settings, terms and conditions, the use of private information, GDPR, this European Union version of how those regulations are managed. And of course, now there's a new California version. Anyway, we are basically trending toward more control of people's information, giving the control back to people. Manage blogs. This basically allows you to add additional blogs to your website. I'm not really sure what value this is. One good thing is that it does allow you to post by email or post by voice. I've not explored these. I'm one of those old-fashioned guys where I like to log in and create my blog post and manage everything, including formatting, all by my little self. So let's see, I'm going to go back over here to profile. And let's see, notification settings. This is where you can enable or disable how you are told when people log on, make comments on your site, on your blogs, follow it, and those kinds of things. Blocked sites. This is something that I'm not 100% familiar with. WordPresscom uses a term called reader. You can learn more by clicking on this little learn more link. I noticed that all the way down at the bottom of the page, they do discuss blocked sites. Get apps. This is where you can download apps for your phone, either Android or iPhone. And this allows you to, there are a couple of conveniences here where they can send you a text link to take you directly to the proper app to download. And then you can operate your WordPress.com website from your phone. That's kind of a handy little thing, although I don't really like using my phone. I much prefer the desktop. All right, so let's move on. Before we do move on, though, I want to insert a little bit of a word of caution here, and that is, this is an interesting word of caution, and that is that WordPress.com is changing the look of their back end. As WordPress.com is going through these changes, the word of caution is just that tutorials that you find on the web are likely to be out of date. In fact, ones that I've seen recently that were produced by WordPress.com are out of date. Presumably, if you were to sign up next week, say, and start working with WordPress.com, they do send out individual tutorials to help you get started, and I would assume that those are going to be up to date. But just bear in mind that there may be some variations between what you see in a tutorial and what you see on the back end, but I'm sure you're going to be able to figure it out. Okay, all that having been said, let's head over to my site from here. And we're going to pick out a theme. That's the very next thing that we're going to want to do. So you're going to mouse over Appearance and then click on Themes. The theme is essentially the look and feel of the way your website meets the public eye. So WordPress.com has 129 different themes here, which is obviously overload for what your needs are. But these are, of course, are a variety of different looks that your website might achieve. I suggest that you check these out after you've built a little bit of content so that you can see how changing your theme would really change the content or the look and feel of the site that you have been building. So for instance, if you have built several pages and you've picked colors and that kind of thing and have inserted images and text and you wanted to see what this Eden theme looks like, you can mouse over it now and then click Activate, and all of your content will come over to that theme. I suggest instead that you click on Preview so you're not really committing to the change, but you can take a look at it. Of course, supposedly it's round trip in the sense that if you activate Eden and you've been using another theme and want to go back, you would just click on the original theme. But I'm one that likes to work in a cautious manner, and so I would click on preview, and you can see that this is what the theme that I've created so far, or the website that I've created so far, would look like in that particular theme. So I'm just going to stick with this Heaver theme. To move into the next section, what you want to do is click on either customize from here, or most likely, because you're not going to be in the theme builder or the theme picker, you're going to be here in your dashboard working on pages or posts and that kind of thing. So you'll again want to mouse over appearance and then come down to customize. The customization box that we're looking at here, these items vary depending on the theme that you're using. So if you've got a fairly wild theme that has a lot of different things going on in it, you'll find there's more selection, more selectable items under each of these things. So, but let's just take a quick look through here. Site identity. This is where you would upload a logo for your website. These things that we've already set in the other place that we were have been brought over here, but you could change these here. You can include a little site icon here. This is the little favicon that you see in the tabs, like the W up here all the way at the top. Whenever you create a new tab, your site icon would appear there. And then you can display or not display your site title and tagline at this point. So let's see, I'm going to go back up here and close out of site identity. Colors and backgrounds, pretty self-explanatory. You can choose a color palette that gets applied immediately to your site, so you can see how some of those links would work out. You can pick a featured one, or you can, if you want to get back to the default colors, you just click on default, and then you can go through and pick additional colors using your branding colors that hopefully you've already got. So you would insert your hex values here to put your colors into certain spots on your website. Menus, this is one place where you can work on your menu, and the menu is basically the navigation here that we've talked about earlier. This is accessible under appearance as well. You can mouse over appearance and then click on menus, but if you're in the customizer, you can find it here as well. So you can see that we've got our various pages, and this allows you to drag these and change the order, and you can see that it live updates here. So we've got about down at the end. I'm going to put it back the way it was. And locations just show you the different things. If you've created a footer menu, then you can edit it by basically, now that what that did was it put our primary menu down here in the footer as well. So you can enable or disable that. And this is where you turn on and off your social media links as well. One other thing to point out here that's really important is that you can set these menu items as indents just by sliding them over, and that creates drop downs. And this is particularly of use when you've got a ton of pages and you don't want to keep adding all of those individual pages to the main menu. So we're going to come back out of menus and go down to content options. It says show the featured show the featured image on pages. Check to display a featured image at the top of your pages when they have one. So that's a universal change that you could make if you want. Widgets are individual little blocks of content that can be moved around. They show up in the sidebar or in the footer. In this particular theme, when you click on widgets, you are actually editing the footer in this particular case. So what you do then is click on add block, and this allows you to add paragraphs, images, columns, and that kind of thing. This is a preview of the block editor, which we're going to be diving into next. Homepage settings, this is where you pick your home page as either being your blog post page, which is this right here. Now, if we really wanted our homepage to be our blog, this is where you would change it. And I don't like that idea, so I'm switching it back to a static page. And then, of course, your posts page, your blog page, would be your blog. So, and then hide homepage title. I encourage you to check this, because if you don't, then you've got this big gigantic title here that really people don't need because they just landed on your homepage. They should know where they are. I'm going to save changes, even though we didn't really make any. And so AMP is the next item up, and AMP stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages. So you can read about it here. This is beyond the scope of this tutorial. But there is a page on WordPress.com that goes into a lot of detail about this. I don't believe that it's available on every single theme and every single page within the WordPress.com architecture, so that's something you can take a look at if you are interested in that. When you click on fonts, you'll learn here that you basically are setting up fonts in the block editor and not at this particular point in the navigation structure on the back end. And then additional CSS, this requires an upgrade. Additional CSS means additional coding. For CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and that allows for very specific coding to make things like buttons do things or appear in different places than the theme typically allows. All right, just before we get into that next section about images, I just want to pop in real quick and say, I touched on this whole idea, we talked a little bit about it in the last session, about privacy and terms and conditions and GDPR, the European regulations. There are new regulations coming out of California now. And one of the big misconceptions that people have that I've run into is thinking that if you're US based, there's no point in really going by the GDPR regulations. That's not true. We actually are all subject to those same regulations unless you have set up your website so that it may not be seen in the European Union. Which you can technically do by obviating certain country IP addresses. So while I think it's necessary, I think people are moving to it very slowly. I think it is something that we all need to be paying attention to and staying up on it. Maybe at some point we should do a future tutorial about that entire scope of things, but it is necessary, and it is something that in addition to accessibility, we need to be paying attention to with our websites. So if you have any questions about the stuff that we just covered in that last video, then please make note of them, and we'll cover them after this after we go through the rest of the presentation. So images, we spent some time in the first session talking about the importance of images, and I wanted to just go over a couple of notes here about images, because in the video we talked about how they all go to reside in the media library, but I want you to learn some more things about videos on WordPress.com. This is really a cool service. This was certainly not around in the beginning of WordPress.com, but they have worked out an arrangement with Pexels, Pexels.com. Pexels also has videos. And so you can look through both their static images. I don't know if the videos are actually technically available directly for WordPress.com, but certainly their static images are. So there is a way to when you go to add an image, you can select a link that takes you to Pexels.com as part of the interface, and you can do searches with keywords for things like nature, river, fields, that kind of thing. The other thing that I thought was really cool that I learned in preparing for this training was that you can connect your Google Drive. If you've got a Google Drive full of images, you can connect that to your WordPress.com site that will pull over images on demand. As Lisa pointed out last time, there's some really great images on Pixabay.com. I'm a big fan of Unsplash. Unsplash is another one of those monster sites with just thousands and thousands and thousands of really fantastic images. The only thing that you really do need to do, and I encourage you to play by the rules, they're not going to come get you if you don't, but I do encourage you to use the attributions, because these are really world-class photographers that are basically making their content available for those of us for free. So let's give them credit where it's due. I made a note on here that I've got a copyright post coming up soon. I did an interview with a intellectual property attorney, and it'll be up on baldguystudio.com/blog as soon as I get around to finishing that, along with the other things that I've got going on. So, but it won't be too long. If what you're looking for are graphics, and we think about these as vectors. So a vector is a highly scalable graphic. So if you think about a picture that you might get off of Pexels or any of the other free sites, or even ones that you're paying for, I didn't make a note on here about depositphotos.com, but that's another one that really is worth looking at. Those are, you pay a subscription fee for those. And in fact, while I'm thinking about it, with Thanksgiving and Black Friday coming, they typically run a big special on depositphotos.com where you can get 100 photos for like $40. It's kind of crazy. And I can provide some information about how you do that. But anyway, so those images, as big as they are, and sometimes, they're 5,000 pixels wide, so they're bigger than I can reach, basically. Still, if you were to scale those up from their native sizes to, much bigger, like on the side of a building, if you wanted to do something like that, they're going to pixelate, depending on how they were projected. Scalable graphics, meaning vectors, you can enlarge infinitely. So, the gigantic graphics that you see on the side of buildings or on billboards and those kind of things, those are all scalable vector graphics. So, and you can find a huge array of those over on vectorstack.com. That's my go-to. So when we get to day 3, we're going to include a tutorial on how to optimize images. This is something I mentioned last time, and we don't want to be forcing watermelons through snakes, people. So I'm going to teach you how to optimize your images so that you're not sending a 3 megabyte image through the internet to a visitor's browser when a 125 kilobyte picture will do the job just as well. Okay, so I mentioned the block editor at the top. Gutenberg is the official name for the block editor. This is a new page creation paradigm that was introduced back in 2018. And it was named, obviously, for the printing press inventor Johannes Gutenberg from the mid-teens. Where was he? 1400, 1500, someplace way long time ago. But that's the namesake for this new page creation paradigm. And the supposition that I've read about is that WordPress.com, by having what we still call the classic editor, and I'll talk about that in a second, they were feeling a little left behind because Wix and Squarespace and Weebly and the GoDaddy Builder, as well as the tools that we'll talk about next week on WordPress.org or self-hosted WordPress websites, all use a much more robust page builder, much more WYSIWYG, if you will. What you see is what you get. So you'll be able to move things around. So when Mullenberg and the other, Matt, when the CEO came up with this idea of moving to something more robust, he came up with this thing called the block editor, also called Gutenberg. So it is the backbone now of WordPress.com. It defaults to that builder. So we really do need to learn how to manage the content generation with with that, with the block editor. So the block editor versus the classic editor, this is kind of a duke 'em out sort of thing going on. The block editor was not exactly an instant hit when it came out. It really took a lot of us WordPress folks by shock, by surprise, and we were shocked and somewhat dismayed to see that WordPress was going this way, because we were used to this thing called the classic editor. And this is really what the classic editor looks like. If you're familiar with the back end of WordPress at all, this is what you've probably been using. The revolt was underway as soon as it was announced. The classic editor does exist as a plugin, and it was downloaded tens of thousands of times, probably in the first couple of weeks. I know I grabbed it for every one of my websites, because WordPress wanted us to move over to the block editor. We didn't want to go because it was changed, and it was something that we didn't want to have to deal with. At this point, the editor, I checked it yesterday, the classic editor has been downloaded as a plugin for typically WordPress.com or WordPress.org sites over 5 million times for those self-hosted sites. So the classic editor capability is still available on WordPress.com. You should know that that's still available, but it comes with a warning, and it's a pretty dire warning. I noticed after I'd done some creation with the block editor that they want you to use, and then went back to select the classic editor, the first thing that pops up is you may lose your stuff, kind of a warning. So, or it will reformat in ways that you don't expect, that kind of a thing. So it is kind of a scary thing to go back and forth. So I do think that the future is here, and we need to learn how to use the block editor. They're saying that the classic editor is going to be available until 2022, although I think there was a hue and cry from the developer community and designer community. So they put out a subsequent statement that is along the lines of, or as long as necessary. The block editor, to its credit, has undergone constant refinement and enhancement, and actually they're releasing components of it before the general public gets to see those, so that they're always in beta testing. And the other thing that's kind of cool about it is that the block editor is going to have third-party libraries available. This does happen on some of the self-hosted WordPress websites, but I think it's cool that it's come into the block editor as well. So you'll be able to probably purchase, in a lot of cases, additional page layouts and that kind of thing that you can just fold into your WordPress.com website. So since it's the future, let's go ahead and see how it works. And this is a little 8-minute video that I want to share with you about how this thing actually works. The block editor is used on both pages and posts. So once you've gotten used to using it on one, you'll be able to use it on the other just as well. So to illustrate how we use the block editor, and also a really cool new feature that WordPress.com is offering these days, I have deleted the About page from my list of pages. You can see here I'm in Pages and then All Pages. I have deleted About so that I can create a new one. So what you do then is come up here to Add New, and you will be taken to a thing called Layouts. And this is a really neat little feature. You can create a page from scratch by clicking on Blank Page. But then the other thing is that you can scroll through all of these different page layouts and apply them initially to the page that you're about to build. If you are about to create an About page, then this would be a good place to look. Home pages, here's some additional concepts for your home page. This is why I was suggesting earlier that you not get too carried away with the theme, because you have plenty of design options as you get further into developing on WordPress.com. So services pages, there's a couple of options here, and so on and so forth. Images, this would be for an artist or something like that, a visual artist, where they want to demonstrate their capabilities in a portfolio style. Okay, so I'm going to create a new About page. So I'm clicking on the About section of the Layout Builder and then scrolling through these. what I'm thinking I will use is this resume with portrait and social links. This is a good place to start. And the title is already added on here, so we don't need to do that. Now we're in the block editor, and across the top, this is where you can add various components of blocks. This is undo, this is redo, and then you've got a couple of other ways to look at your blocks. You can list them, put them in list view as opposed to a layout view, which I'll show you in a second. And then over here, you've got publish tools as well as your global settings. Global settings allows you to make universal changes across your entire website. So if you click on global settings and then go to page, you can do things like change the featured image, the excerpt. If you decide to write one, you can place that copy in here. Allow comments on this particular page. Typically, you wouldn't do that. That's typically reserved for blog posts. So you can make a lot of global changes to the page here. And then also you can go into the this font directory and use some of their predetermined font pairings. You do that right down here. So if I were to change this font pairings that I'm using to Chivo or Chivo and Open Sans, then you can see as soon as I click on these various options, the heading is the first one that they indicate here, Arvo, and Montserrat is the body copy. Then you can see that those change with me depending on the pairing that I'm selecting. You're not restricted to that because you can go into this builder right here and change this back to the theme default, and or use any of the pairings as you wish. And then when you're all set, you go ahead and click publish and you're good to go. Moving back over to the left side of our toolbar here at the top, you can click on this toggle plus sign, which will open up the block editor preview panel. This is really cool because you can mouse over each one of these and get a little flyout that shows you what each of them would look like if you were to add these as a block. Now from this particular component, if I were to add something like a quote and I click on that, it will add it all the way down at the bottom. And there is a better way to do that so that you're not having to drag things up and down the page. And we'll get into that here in just a second. The other thing that you can take a look at while you're here is patterns. And basically this is a recitation of what we saw earlier when we created the page in the first place. You can go to this and look at a bunch of different styles. There are so many options, it'll probably drive you crazy. But what this is another view of those page layouts. You may remember this one right here, where you could just add this entire component to a particular page. I do have to caution you not to go too wild because your viewers are not going to want to be overwhelmed with too many ins and outs and changes and types of content. So keeping it simple really is a good thing to do. Another cool thing about the block editor is the flexibility that it has within a block. So once you've added one, you can go down and then anytime you're clicking inside a block, you get a little block toolbar that allows you to select a column and do different things to it. You can change the block type or style here to columns, list, group, and all those kinds of things. You also can change the alignment, make words bold, or you can make them italic, and you can create links here as well. Then there's more here. This is typically what we call the kitchen sink, the mode. So there's numbers of things that you can add. One more thing that I want to show you here is that once you've created a block that you really like, you can duplicate it. You can insert a block before this one or after this one. It's easy to move the block. If you're good at editing HTML, then you can do that. And then the other thing that's kind of nifty here is that you can create global reusable blocks. So if I wanted to create this one as a global block, we'll just call it global block for now, then when I save that, it goes into a new menu up at the top that allows me to reintroduce that particular block wherever I want. So all I have to do is open this, and now I've got global block that I can add. In this particular case, it showed it right underneath that because that's where my cursor was. So there are a number of things that you can do with the block editor, and I've really just scratched the surface here. I strongly recommend that you get into the block editor and start playing, because that's really the best way to learn. This list view is really handy too, because it will take you to a list view of your entire page. So you can see when I mouse over image, the box highlights around the gal with the hat. If I mouse over paragraph, then that lights up down below there too. So you can see that it's easy to quickly click on these in the list view and navigate to the part of the page that you want to work on. One more thing that I want to show you about the block editor is that you can make some additional changes to these blocks if you want. I'm going to select an area that's within this group of content components, and I'm selecting this global options cog over here on the right, and this is where you can do things like change columns. But what's cool too is that you can preview this page in tablet view as well as mobile view. So you can just take a quick look and see how the page is beginning to look. Of course, you will get a much better look once you've saved it and navigate to that page on your actual phone. So that's it for the block editor. And don't forget to save your changes by clicking Update. All right, so winding up here, I've just got another couple of slides that I want to go through. Getting started on a new site or a makeover, if you're in the mood to try out WordPress and you haven't been working on it, I do suggest, like we talked about last time, that you take a look at other district websites, including ones outside of Virginia. You don't necessarily have to restrict yourself to district websites. That's a handy place to start, of course, but you could look at any type of governmental website or anything else, that any other field of interest that you've got that you think might pertain to your particular district. I do suggest that you work on that design doodle that I mentioned last time. So when I say a design doodle, this is what I mean. I mean literally a doodle. Just take a blank sheet of paper and start scribbling out some ideas for what you want to put where. Do you want a hero image? And my scribble there says hero image of us working with producers. The next panel down is welcome with the new director. And then the next section is services, but you may decide part of the way through that you want a headline over top of your main services. So do another scribble. So it really is best to have a wireframe of your design and text ideas before you start, to avoid overwhelm. I really can't emphasize this enough. As you can see from what we've gone through with the block editor, the theme selections, colors, fonts, spacing, columns, there's so many things that you can do to drive yourself nuts that I suggest that you stay away from that by figuring out what you want to do before you get too far into the actual creation part. So I do suggest that you create a Google Doc or some other collaboration space document. The nice thing about having something on Google Docs is that more than one person can edit it if you've given permission. And it's also just a great place for you to be able to keep a document going online that you can work on at your office or in your home studio on your desktop computer, and then switch to your laptop when you should be watching the news. Something like that. All right, so start a simple draft of your copy in an outline format. I've suggested to a number of clients that they just really start a Google Doc with home, and then about, and then services, and then contact, and then go back in and start literally writing in underneath those things what you want on those individual pages. You can also go more elaborate if you want. This is you may not be able to see this very well on this slide, but this is a a Google Doc that was created by a copywriter that I work with. She is very facile at not only writing copy, but designing as she goes. So she created this. It's not really a full design, but this is what I mean by a wireframe. So she's worked out a way so that the copy actually flows down the homepage and suggests things and where they go. The yellow highlighting, if you're familiar with Google Docs, you know what that is. It's basically been highlighted because there's a comment that's not showing on this slide, but it's out in the margin for someone else on the team to resolve. So as I mentioned last time, I want to leave you with this thought that your primary goal should be that your site needs to be about the needs of your clients, your producers, your stakeholders, your board of directors, rather than the things that you feel like you want to say. I fall for this all the time, you guys. I think I know what my constituents need, and I say them and I get crickets. So really do spend the time that you need to find out what their needs are, and then do your best to meet those needs head on if possible. So let's stop here and take a little bit of Q&A time. And I just wanted to say thanks once again for attending today. And again, a reminder to identify some really simple steps to improve your website, and do those. Even if you're not moving over to WordPress.com or doing anything else, use some of the things that I've been working with you on to improve your website. After you've got that little cluster of stuff done, then do some more. Make little successes, because that really is the best way to go. All right, I'm going to stop the share here and take questions if anyone has any.
Okay, thank you so much, Chuck. Does anyone have any questions? You can speak up, take yourself off mute if you like. Someone did have a question earlier about she didn't get the name of the sites with the images quick enough. So I did put those in the chat box, the Pixabay and the Unsplash.
Yep. Yeah, and then also depositphotos.com.
Okay.
Depositphotos.com, and I can send a link to you all to give you a heads up that you can keep your eye on this and get notifications, so that when that big sale happens on Deposit Photos, you can go out and nab a bunch of credits that you can use. I mean, it's nuts. Being able to get 100 images, super high quality, high resolution, 3 megabyte, 4 megabyte, even 10 megabyte images for $40, so 40 cents each is just nuts. So that's the idea. So yeah, Deposit Photos.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any questions before we wrap up? Again, you can, okay, here's one. Could you discuss how you suggest we back up our website data?
Yeah, this is a really important question, Maura. Thank you. If you're on WordPress.com, as I understand it, they are encouraging you to move up in the categories from free to, up through premium to business and so on, before you can actually acquire backups. And the thing is that you can't really add plugins until you get to some of those higher reach plans as well. So that's something that you really should look at in terms of WordPress.com. But both on WordPress.com and on self-hosted WordPress websites, you can get plugins that take care of backups for you. My favorite one is called Updraft. Updraft is it's a free plugin. You can get additional features added to it if you want. The cool thing about Updraft, it's called Updraft Plus, actually, and that's UPDRAFT+. That's if you're on a self-hosted WordPress website, you can look for it in the plugin directory and add that, and then configure it. It takes 3 seconds to configure. Basically, what you do is you say that you want to create and save backups on a weekly basis if you're updating your website on a frequent basis like that. You can select either just the database or the entire website, meaning the images and everything else that you could put on your website. Or you can do, you can switch it to monthly or whatever time frame that you want to. You also have the ability to upload that to a cloud storage. So now you've got redundancy on top of your backup. The reason that you want to be doing backups is that there's nothing really more depressing in the world of WordPress and websites than going to your website and finding it all gone, or that you backspaced over something that you weren't supposed to in a code view you didn't know you weren't supposed to be in, and you took your site down and you have no way to recover it. So backups are super crucial, and I'm certain that Wix and Squarespace, Weebly, the GoDaddy Builder, all those other platforms have a way to conduct backups too, but really put that near the top of your list to make sure that you're protected in the case of a loss. Kelly is asking, my WordPress website wants me to upgrade a lot. If I upgrade, will I lose any content? Kelly, is that a self-hosted WordPress website, or is that on WordPress.com? I think the answer is going to be the same in either case, but I'm just curious.
You know, I'm not really sure. I don't know how to tell. How can I tell? Because I just kind of inherited the web page, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, send me the link to it, Kelly.
Okay.
I can tell you. Chuck at baldguystudio.com. I'll be happy to take a look at the code and tell you where it is. The answer really is the same for both. If you're constantly being asked to upgrade, you're probably on one of the paid services. So you're on WordPress.com, as we've just talked about. Squarespace, Wix, they're all interested in having you upgrade, so you get plenty of opportunities to do that. If you're on self-hosted WordPress websites, you are not really hounded about upgrading. So I would guess that that's not the case, but I'll take a look and see.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions from anybody? Well, as I said last time, I do appreciate your attending these workshops. And if you have anything that you want to talk about around WordPress or websites in general, feel free to reach out to me at chuck@baldguystudio.com. I actually really love helping people, so take advantage of that. I have limits, but I'm not going to build a website for you for free. However, I really do like working with folks and trying to help them make a better statement online.
Thank you so much, Chuck. If anyone has any more questions, drop them in real quick. Next week, let's see, sorry, next week, same day, same time, 19th, 10 o'clock, we will do our third and final session. Everyone make sure you go to our website and register if you haven't already. I will be sending out the video link probably tomorrow. But if anyone has any questions, you can reach out to me or Chuck, and we will do the best we can to answer your questions.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great day, you all.
Thank you, Chuck. See you next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.